Hello and welcome to the Creativity Couch. We're your hosts and creativity agony aunts, and along with special guests, we're here to answer all your creativity challenges, conflicts and conundrums as we take a deep dive into the sweet and salty realities of creativity and living a creative life. No topic is off limits, so make yourself a cuppa and come join us on the Creativity Couch.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Creativity Couch. I'm Anna from Mama Creatives.
And I'm Christina from Creative Consultancies.
And today we have our special guest, Emilya Colliver, who is an incredible woman. She's an arts consultant. She is the founder of Art Pharmacy and Culture Scouts, and an incredible woman who's also got 2 children. And today we're going to be talking about how you make the different relationships work within a creative life, and a few other things that relate to a question that we received from one of the people who send in their questions from our communities. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what creativity means to you.
So what creativity means to me, I really thought about these questions, so thank you so much for sending them through.
Thank you for thinking. Thank you for coming on the Creativity Couch
I'm
and
very
having
excited.
a cup of tea on the couch.
I know, how good is
What have we
it?
got? We've got I've got chamomile, vanilla and manuka honey from Pukka. What have you got?
I think I've got the same. Beautiful.
You've got chamomile.
The chamomile.
I've got a blue one.
Oh, you've got to relax. You've got to relax.
I have got relax.
And what have you
Got
got?
into the zen. I don't know. I'm just still like I don't know. I'm just like revitalizing.
You've been energetic all weekend,
Yeah.
so we've been
Just keeping it
revitalizing. I'm gonna try some.
So what creativity means to me is to express yourself without feeling judged. I know that
I like
sounds
that.
just, I think with creativity, a lot of people, I mean, I'm now working with a lot of corporates, so it feels very, like a very different idea about creativity. I think when you're around artists a lot, that it's very easy to be in that stead. But because I do work a lot with, corporate C-suites, they have a different feeling about creativity, and I feel like I'm an educator.
How do they feel about in the sense of a different feeling about creativity? Like what does that mean? Like in what way?
Well, I just feel like a lot of people don't understand about creativity and what it means, and how
The creative process.
Yeah,
or
everything.
The output.
Creative practitioners and how you can work with them on many different scales. Being in the art world, I felt like it was the 5%, but everyone eats each other up. So I've jumped out of the art world to go to the 95% to educate them about creativity and creative practitioners and how you can work with them. So,
Something that I really love about the work you do, like I really love the way you're bridging this kind of gap that seems to happen where the arts becomes the other or the smaller minority, and the corporate is like I just think you are such an important, I just get so excited every time you talk about what you do, because you are, I know you are, it's not just in what you're saying, I see it in the way your business grows and the way you work.
This is an art pharmacy, so
correct.
We'll talk about creativity, but a little bit about art pharmacy as well.
Yeah, we'd like to talk about that now.
We'll finish creativity, I think.
Creativity,
We'll just hear it,
I think creativity, it's about being able to express yourself without being judged, meaning that you just being yourself and accepting what talents you have. Because I feel like with a lot of, anything that you have, like if you're a really great interviewer, or if you're a great trainer with what you do, Christina, I think owning that talent and that creativity and really owning it. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes, is actually not listen to all the people around you. Yeah, it is.
Hard, isn't it?
And it's very easy to be surrounded by the wrong people. If you're surrounded by the right people, they will really sort of help you move forward with what that creativity is. Yeah. And that's not something about being judged about you. So, I feel like in Australia where we don't value creativity, we should be valuing it a lot more than we do.
Yeah.
And I think I need another one of me, but if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I'd probably go into the education sector and actually educate them about how creativity could really start in schools, because actually that's where it should be starting.
Yeah. Are you an art maker yourself? Like, do you paint or draw or create? Like, do you have that drive within you to make your own work?
Well, I did. When I came back to Australia, after all that time, I went back to a college down here and started painting. And that's actually how Art Pharmacy started, because I was painting, and one of the teachers, she did these amazing artworks, and she didn't know where to exhibit them, so I ended up doing like a pop-up show with her work. And I was painting at the same time. And the thing is, I've got 2 kids now, and I'm running 3 businesses, and it's just a little bit
That's
hectic.
creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, motherhood and being an entrepreneur is creative in itself.
It is.
So I think that's a good segue into the question.
Yes.
Should we read the question?
I get to read the question.
Because that's what we're going to be talking about today, all those things.
I really like this question. I just think it's interesting. A topic I hear time and time again from small business owners who are often creators is, my partner husband wants me to get a proper job. How do I get them on board with my vision and inner need to run this creative business? What's the first what first came to mind when
Get a
you kind
proper
of like
job.
heard that? I know
Yeah,
there's
a
like a
proper
few
job.
red flags in there for me.
It's like get a proper job and get your partner and people on side.
But that comes back down to valuing art and their creativity, and that's why education needs to start, because I think if it was valued, then you wouldn't have this proper art job. That's the core of the problem.
Exactly.
So, and maybe it'll change with the education, but I think the proper job, yes, and this is the thing, I don't conform to the whole society. I just think, well, and a lot of people are conformists and have to listen to that, but I just don't. So I think it was never really a thought for me. I just thought, well, I've got to do something, and I started the shows, because if you start something, it just happens. It just, when you open it, it's like your podcast, you just open a door and then it just flies.
Yeah, and then you take the next. That's been coming up a lot actually in almost every episode. In fact, like in various ways, there does seem to be this consistent message of like there is no magic thing. I mean, you just do have to at some point step out there and start.
But coming back to the question of having a proper job, I think if anyone's out there thinking about it, there'll always be people telling you to go and get a proper job. I mean, unless you're out there being a business owner or working in the city, making that time where you're making the money to invest back into yourself to actually then start on the side. So that's what my advice would be.
Keep your day job.
Keep your day job, do something on the side, and then and slowly trickle it down rather than just jumping straight in, because then that's when it gets scary and stressful.
And you get yourself into financial strife. You don't want to, you've got to be realistic about it.
Yeah,
if you want to make money from it. Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's what that person wants to. They're saying, they're talking about a business, aren't they? So they're talking about money.
Yeah, and I think if you treat it like a proper job too, I think that's another thing that sometimes I notice in the work that I do with coaching creatives and training them in that business side of things, is that sometimes the artists I think there's a self-perception thing that needs to change, like a societal one, and also a perception within the artists themselves where they're treating it like a proper job. Like I find, often artists don't want to invest in their education or the work they do with me, but yet they want it to be a proper job. Like you're talking about, you're doing a rebrand at the moment, and you're not just kind of like watching a couple of few free YouTube videos and like having a dabble. I mean, you're treating your arts job as a proper job and taking proper business steps. I mean, I think there's an element in that too. If you want people to see it as a proper job, treat it as a proper job.
But I think it goes back to what you said, is about having value, and I think it's also encompassing relationships, identity, worth, and there's finances in that, but I think it comes back to the worth and the value. And how would you sort of speak to that?
Oh, I mean, and this is quite an interesting subject, because it's very hard for artists to value their time and what their time is worth. Because if you make an artwork, by the time you've spent the time making the work, buying the canvas, sitting down painting it, and if it's taken you 30 hours and you're getting paid a couple of grand for the artwork, have you actually made much money from it? And this is where, we work a lot with clients. We're working with a client, they called us on Friday and they said they want us to find an artist to put some artwork in window displays, like fashion boutiques. And have an artist, and they're like, well, how much is this going to cost? So we had to go back to asking, how much is this going to be? Like, but you need to make money out of this. So we say that to them, like, cost it up, how many hours you're going to do, then you have to make a margin on it, like 30% minimum for the artist. That's what I'd probably recommend. 50% if they can. but that's actually to take home, not their time and effort and everything as well.
So on top of, like
Everything
an
else.
actual profit on top
Yeah,
of.
for like 30, 40, I mean 50% is probably ideal, to be honest with you, but it's very hard because you want to, I mean that's like, that's what I'm learning now in business is how you, you know, the costings of it, of, you know, running a team and running a business and rent and, you know, council tax and everything like that. And as a person, you need to understand the materials, the cost, the
And your time.
rent and time. Then you have to make a profit on top of that. So not just paying for that and actually making something on top.
And professional development too. Like I think I saw some quote the other day. We've banished the creativity couch cat outside
Yeah, let her in,
because
that's
poor
fine.
old Emilya is allergic.
I know that's okay.
But she's like wants to come in. Oh, there's Vicky crawling across. We'll just let her come across.
You've had your tablet, so
Yes.
Yeah, she's
we're
okay
ready
now.
to do that. You should come. I can edit her.
You're. I don't know if I want to edit that out. I don't know.
Anyway, so going back to this, so I think it's about valuing yourself. When you talked about having sort of self-belief, valuing yourself and your worth, and then everything comes from that.
Yeah.
And you know,
And say no. Saying no when it doesn't. When it's
Yeah.
not
How do you say? Because I think this is a big problem in the arts too. Is that there's this real poverty consciousness, this real scarcity mindset that goes on. So often artists will, like I often use this example that I worked once with a musician, a producer, who had this such a broad scope of pricing he was offering. You know, like some people was charging $25 an hour, some he was charging 100, and I like when we unpacked that, it was partly to do with what he didn't want to do was say no to the $25 an hour jobs, partly because he was scared more work wouldn't come in, and partly because he felt like, well, I'd rather do that than mow lawns. And you know, like my advice to him was, well, no, I'm sorry, like if you want to make this, you need to go mow the lawns and just stick with the $100 thing. So like, how do we, like, there's a lot of fear in an industry that's so often underpaid and where it's so competitive, and I mean they're actual facts of the thing.
Well,
like, how do we not fall into this scarcity and anxiety and be brave enough to say no?
Well, there's a massive disconnect because then you've got massive prices as well for art.
That's right.
You know.
That's correct. That's right.
So we're talking about someone who wants to make money and make their business out of their creativity and their art.
So how do you say no to those
Well,
in order
it
to say
depends.
yes to
Because
them?
when I was in the early days, I did say yes because then I learned, like, you need to learn about the different realms and where you sit within that.
Yeah.
So you just don't know where all those different doors keep opening, and when one isn't good, you keep shutting and then keep opening. And that's what I did in the early days. Now I know what a good opportunity is. Like, you know, we had like a big credit card company contact us saying they're going to fly us down to another city, and we were like, well, what are we going to get out? Who are the? So now we actually will stop and think about it. Which is, before I would have said yes, but now I'm like, well, can I take out 3 days of the business, even though they're paying for my flights and accommodation?
Yeah.
It's like, actually, what am I going to get out of this?
You're going to get paid for your time.
Yeah.
So
Is it worth it?
There's a period of yes before you can say no.
Yes, there's definitely yeses, but you've also got to train, because the problem is it's this downward spiral if you are working with, you know, councils, governments, or the, you know, development world, that if you're underpaying yourself, then you're also not doing a justice to the other artists before you or after you.
Yes.
So if you're giving it for free, then so they'll probably take the more affordable artists. So that's why everyone's got to be on an even keel of where they're going. And we always try, and when an artist wants something, we're like, okay, tell me how much you want to get paid for this, because rather than us mandating a budget, we actually say, well, what do you want to get paid for this?
Yeah.
Because then, and this is what we're learning as well, that there are these emerging artists, but we're also working with like larger established artists.
Different.
So they have different prices, and you've got to. We want to be working with artists that value that, but also for them to educate them how we do this, so you can get everybody on board. So it's. I mean, I know NAVA does it really well as well.
We'll put in the show notes some links to NAVA. I do recommend if you're a visual
NAVA's
artist
great.
to join up.
Yeah.
So it also talks about expectations, doesn't it? About, because the person specifically talked about their partner, so expectations in your relationship, so your husband's working with you.
That's right.
So how have you managed to incorporate that relationship and make it work in your marriage, which is a hard thing to do?
It is, and I think so my husband Giles, we've been together for 14 years. He was working in an IT company, so in the city, and earning really good money, and then I was like, okay, well, he got redundancy, and I said, well, let me run the show for a while. And then actually after him letting me go and just going for it, and I knew I had to make it
Did you
work.
have kids at that point?
Yes, I've actually had because you've met me years ago with when we caught up for meetups, and I just had my daughter. Well, I was pregnant at the time. I was thinking about art pharmacy, and then a midwife told me, "You're the most creative you ever be within the first year." So I gave birth to my daughter, and I created art pharmacy, and then I created Culture Scouts after my son was born. So if you're thinking about doing a business, actually, it's really good when you're actually pregnant. I know it sounds really bizarre, but I actually believe it. So, I mean, it's interesting.
What do you do though if your partner isn't on board?
Tell us
How did you get him on board?
Tell him
How
you
did
made
I
it
get
work
him on
first.
board
Yeah.
is well, after I was doing, and then the thing is he worked in the city, he's a corporate person.
Yeah.
He's very analytical. His father is a lawyer, so he's got this, reads all these big contracts, and I'm obviously very creative, and I don't know how to, manage that sort of side, even though I have to sort of know. So he sort of came in and manages that side of the business now. The thing is, we do sit right next to each other, and it's quite full on. The other thing is bringing it home, but now he can see the value of it, and it wasn't overnight. He's always been very supportive, but you also have to push.
Do you have boundaries? Do you sort of work at home, or do you sort of have boundaries when you come home that it's private time, or how do you negotiate that partnership?
We get up. We've got we work 9 to 5:30. Generally, we all leave on time. But he also runs his own motorcycle. He runs Sabotage Motorcycles, which is restoring vintage motorcycles. So he started that a couple of years ago. So I'm sort of trying, and he has Wednesdays off, and so. But as far as navigating, and I'm on a lot of committees, so we are ships in the night a lot of the time. But,
Is that how you're making it work? You hardly see each other.
Yeah, potentially. But we do have a lot of
I'm joking because I was married for 14 years to my husband and we separated, but we used to do a lot of projects together.
Okay.
And he's creative and I'm creative, and on paper we had very complementary skills, and we did a lot of big things together, and he helped me with a lot of my businesses. He's a designer and he did all the identity and the creative stuff. And it got to the point where we could not work together because we just were, we had no boundaries because we could say whatever we wanted to each other. And the way that we made it work was that he would send me a brief and I would respond to it. We would do it all through email as if we were clients.
Yeah. Okay.
And we treated each other as clients, and it was amazing. The results were great, the experience was joyful, and we didn't actually speak to each other at all.
Yeah.
So it was all through email, and it just created very good boundaries.
Yeah.
And then there was no personal emotion involved. It was all about the work.
Yeah.
And it took us a long time to get there though.
Yeah.
And so do you sort of maybe have, is that necessary for you, or?
Well, the thing is, because we've got a team as well, so there'll be, tomorrow morning we've got a whip, and there's like 8 of us in a meeting. So it's ran, I suppose, now because we go into an office, we've got a whip, we go in and sit down around the table, and we're running the project. We go through like all the different projects, and then we're sort of filtering off the different kinds of projects, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'm always like, right, what's happening with this project, and I'm a little bit more, I need to understand all the details as well. So I'm the one that runs the business, even though he's in it. It's art pharmacy is
It's yours.
It's my business, yeah. So that's also very hard. We're also looking at the moment going, what does he want to do? If there's something that he wants to do now, that he's sort of really got in and helped me, support me for so long, that maybe it's time for him to sort of look
do
around.
his thing.
Yeah, because he has jumped in and just helped me manage it all.
I know a lot of women through Mama Creatives, and in general women who are doing very well in their lives, or they've done very well with their businesses or with their own creative projects because they actually have a very supportive partner. Now I couldn't have done a lot of what I have done without my supportive husband at the time when we were married. Even though we broke up, he was very supportive of me doing my own thing, and it took a certain personality to say, yeah, go and do your thing, go and we just worked. It just worked to a point.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't have that. The women I know have had great partners, whether they stayed married or not. During that time, the partners were very conscious that creativity was important, having a business was important, having time to do it was important, and they would support them in some ways. And all the women that I know where it's successful, they have this great relationship now this person is saying, how do you get someone on board who doesn't have that philosophy?
Well, that doesn't see the value. I mean, I feel like
the value.
that really rings a bell for me.
My husband never said to me, get a proper job. He was just like, okay, what's next? What do we need to make it happen? And that's not necessarily true for many people. So,
well, I was going to say, not even just, I mean, they're asking about a partner, but I mean, even if you're single, this can happen. And I notice it actually in my own work very often, not even just in terms of partners, but even friends. And I know their intent is that they want to see me, you know, like they want to see me thriving, or maybe they want my path to be easier, or maybe they just don't understand the arts. But I mean, I do often get a few people, like, especially because I'm working effectively in small business coaching or training, like, why not just do that with other small businesses? You know, like, why, like, I'm often questioned, why have I chosen to work in the arts, and a little bit questioned, like, well, can this ever, you know, like, are there legs in the arts? Or like, so not even like, how do you get people on board? Like, that's so much basically your business, is getting people who don't really believe in the arts on board.
That's right.
Including, so obviously you do it within your business structure, but like, there was some stats that came out a while ago. The Australia Council of the Arts did a big study about success indicators in the arts, and it totally echoed what you're saying, which was almost on par with talent was having a support network. And I know with my clients, I'm all the time working on how do we build these support networks around us. And part of that is, if you've got someone in your life that you want to keep in your life, I mean, how do you get them on board? How do you convince them what you're doing is, or do you not? How do you?
I think you need
what
to.
do you do?
You need to educate them.
You do, and you need to take them away, and you need to sit them down and take them away from your environment, not at home. Take them out for, if there's someone out there. My advice would actually be taking them out in a neutral environment and explaining actually what you're trying to achieve. You know, it's like having, you know, family goals or life goals of what you're trying to achieve. And I think if you take someone out, you know, if you had a partner, husband, that said, actually, this is what I want to achieve in the next year or 2 years, I want to be whatever you want to be in life, you know, the best surfing champion or writing a book, you'd be like, okay, great, thanks for that. Like, how can I support you? So I think rather than just pushing it, and you do need to push it though, with some people, you do need to push. Like, I have to say, I push a lot. Like, I'm very persuasive.
Yes, but you're able to educate and have clarity around that. So it's really important. You have goals, and then you're educating them about the benefit of that. So you're putting your case forward in a very persuasive way. Some people just equate value and success with money.
Yeah, it's not
and
money.
They can feel very resentful if you're just appearing to paint or whatever.
Make art or choose to have
while
clients
they go to a job that they don't enjoy. So why are you allowed to do what you're allowed to do, and I have to do this job that I don't want to do? There's that sort of conflict as well.
In what way? What do you mean by that?
Well, some people I know in relationships where one partner is creative and they're creating work and they're fulfilled by their passion, but maybe not making as much money to contribute to the finances, and then the other person is the more stable person that brings in sort of the regular income, and maybe they don't want to be stuck in that job, but they are to keep the place running. And so there's that conflict, and I think that's what this is coming from, is like, well, why don't you get a proper job kind of like me, and we can contribute together? Why are you allowed to go and do your thing and I'm not? There's that sort of resentment.
Oh, and I think definitely, but as soon as you've got to that point where you can now relax, and that's where I feel like I'm getting with the relationship that I've got with my husband, is that actually now I've been able to achieve what I'm being able to achieve. But I think in the early days, you do have to fight for it, and getting that. But again, that comes back down to communication. You're like, okay, in 2 years' time, this is what I want to achieve. I'm going to go out and work there in a job I hate to make the money, or to put away, or to do things on the weekend, and then you can finally build up that, you know, that nest egg where you can actually have a year off and then really see if it's right. And usually, and I'm sure you, on this couch, you meet a lot of the women you're talking to, it's the same thing. They just had this idea, and then it just grew from that.
They have supportive husbands. People I know have had supportive husbands, and not all of them have. But I must say that my husband and I both had jobs and other work were bringing in money while we did our thing on the side. And I supported him heavily and he supported me heavily, but we had other ways of generating income.
And it's value, isn't it? It's value. Are you aligned with the same values?
But he's a creative. And I think the biggest, I have a friend who's an artist and her husband isn't, and they've always had this clash because he doesn't value
but he needs to be educated as well, because he needs to be brought into her world as well. So you need to educate on both sides, and if he's not on the board, and it's hard because you marry someone, then you find out about these things, but if you can do it from the beginning, and if you the thing is, deep down you sort of know your gut's always right. It's you know, and I think it is very hard, and I have been lucky in that way, but I picked a partner that he studied graphic design. So
I know you've got kids, and we're not only talking about women who are mothers, but this book, Motherhood and Creativity, have you read it?
No, it looks great.
By Rachel Power. So I interviewed Rachel Power at the beginning of Mama Creators. She was the one who started the whole sort of thing where she talks about the divided heart, and she's interviewed 22 pretty famous Australian creative women and how they manage that divide between creativity and motherhood. And so there's a lot of great stories in there, and a lot of great ways of people managing the tension between the two.
I bought that when I was pregnant. Although that book actually is
Catherine Byrne, she's
again that there are a lot of them have supportive
Right,
partners, or they make a choice to prioritise. Some of them choose to prioritise their creative work over their relationships or their relationship with their children as well. So it's a hard dichotomy. But so if you can't get your partner, I mean, they're wanting to get your, you know, like, how do we get them on board with our vision and our inner needs? I agree, and I don't even know. I kind of feel there's a call to, if I've had relationships where it's been enormously creatively fertile, where both partners are super on board, and perhaps that brought a struggle about boundaries, that it just seeped into everything and nothing else had space. And then I've had other relationships where I've had to fight to try and explain at essence who I am as a creative human being, as a musician, as a songwriter, as someone who's always been committed to working in the arts. I'm 20 years and I'm not going out of this industry, but I still face it all the time. So how do we start learning in the arts? Because I face this all the time, and I face it in reality, in the sense that it's true in a sense, probably in terms of quickly building a client base as a business coach. If I broadened to other small businesses, perhaps I would, you know, have more clients or make more money or be able to charge more. But I'm so committed to growing, thriving creative industry, changing these discussions around worth, around like how do we make creativity center stage, the role it has. Like, I'm so passionate about it that sometimes when people say to me, like, just work in small business, it's almost like they're not even seeing who I'm like, do you not even see who I am as a human being? So there's like, it can feel very kind of deeply hurtful in a way when someone you care about, and whether it's your partner or parents, you know, I mean, this is specifically about having a partner on board, but I mean, whether it's your parents or your close friends or, you know, like society at large. I mean, how do we start getting people on board with valuing the arts, and that for some of us this is not even option. Like, I'm sorry, it's not even optional for me. It's not even an option for me to not work in the arts.
I call
it's not optional.
I call it, that's fabulous what you're talking about there, and I think if you're in it, you're in it. And I sometimes now just joined this group called EO Entrepreneur Organisation. I meet other entrepreneurs, and none of them have come from the arts at all. And I think, you know, if I actually wasn't in the arts, I'd be making like way more than I'm making at the moment. But because I'm working in the arts, you know, you just don't earn as much as everybody else out there in finance or. So you meet all these interesting people, and I think actually if I was doing something else, I'd be making way more money. But I think I'm loving what I'm doing. But I'm actually coining the term creative pioneering, where if you think about, we're on the frontier and there's no one else around, and you've just got to make it yourself. Like, you know, when they first came out to Australia, or even in America, when they had all this land, and that's what it feels like it is.
It does.
You've got to go out and just do it yourself. You've got to be your own beacon of light, because if you're waiting for someone else to give that to you, you won't find it. And this is the thing with your partner. They have to be on board, unfortunately. And if they're not, you need to get them, you need to educate them. So you need to become more powerful and make them understand and get them on board, because it's just not going to work otherwise, because you're still going to be butting heads. So, but that's creative. I call it, when I do my presentations within a lot of developers, I'm like, and we have this one slide in our presentation, and we look at like the Sistine Chapel and in Xi'an, the terracotta warriors, and like what do these pictures mean in the past? And it's like the very wealthy people that were commissioning large works of art, and property developers are now the ones that can really, I go back to them going, actually, artists need you, as everyone in the room here.
It's culture. It's creating a society based on, humankind, like what human. Imagine it without the art. Imagine it without good architecture, without great food, without great music.
Right.
I think we forget. There's this great thing that someone put on social media about what life would be like without music, without writing, without everything that we have. Design, it's all creativity. And it's just not valued because we put so much value on money and numbers. But I think we cannot live without the financial reward.
Yeah.
And so how do we define success, and how do we define a proper job? I mean, what is that? You work with artists all the time.
Yeah.
How does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is I see a lot of artists now that you have to be persistent. It's like any artists that are hanging in the Archibald at the moment, they've just been persistent. They kept going. It's like you have to keep going. You just can't stop, because if you do stop and start looking around, then you start doubting yourself, because it's easy to doubt yourself, I think, as well. So to answer your question, what was the question again? Sorry, Anna.
It's about how do we define success, and where does proper job come into that? How do
And the thing is, I don't know when the success really struck to be. I can't even try and pinpoint the day, to be honest with you. I knew after I'd run, when I was running Art Pharmacy, I wasn't making any money from my pop-up shows. I looked at them, I was like, I can't. Like it wasn't.
Can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I can't do this anymore. And then I ran an art fair, brought it over from the UK and ran it. And then I actually was quite smart, because I actually had a booth where I launched both businesses, Culture Scouts and Art Pharmacy. And now I look back, I thought that was actually so smart, because I had 10,000 people coming back and looking at these businesses, and I had all these amazing people that I called up going, can you stand on the booth? Because I was a director, I couldn't stand on the booth. I even still see the people. I said, I owe you, like you just didn't know what they did. They all just did it for free, just as to help me out. And now, like 4 years later, I was like, wow, that was a big, sometimes you feel things that can shift change you. And that was a point where I realized, we had this booth with Culture Scout Art Pharmacy Consulting. We had the head of Tourism Australia come past, and he was head of social media, and he said, this is what Culture Scouts, this is exactly what Sydney needs. And I had Nadine, she's a great love streeter. Amelia, get over here. We've got the head of Tourism Australia here. So I ran back over going, hello. And he's like, this is great. So then from there, with Culture Scouts, that grew, and that was a moment in time, and I felt like that was a success. I wasn't earning any money from that, and even now Culture Scouts is going leaps and bounds, and you can sort of see it as a business. But it's I think I defined that point where I realised I tried it and it worked. And with Art Pharmacy, I think now that I'm on the City of Sydney Nighttime Economy panel, I think that feels like success.
You're legitimising it because you're on a board, and and different communities are. Actually, what's coming to me now? Sorry, it's I read this article the other day. It was about how we're so surprised by women, and we're even having this conversation now. And I'm going to turn it on its head, because we're so surprised when women do well. It's like, oh my God, you've got a supportive husband. But if you look back in history, every male creative has had a woman who's been supportive. And now it's like, oh my God, you've got a supportive husband. But you know what? Men have had that all the way through. I mean, Jackson Pollock, he was an alcoholic, and if he didn't have his partner picking him up off the side of the street and helping him and giving him a space, he wouldn't have been the artist he is today. Just as one example, cliched example, but all of them, I mean, we might call them muses, or their mothers, or their lovers, or their wives, but they were just keeping everything running so they could then just have the space to create. And I think what's happened is now that women, we have our power, we want our time, and but it's kind of like this gender role reversal. It's all one big mess, and it's like we can't understand how this works. But really, it's you're a creative, whether you're a man or a woman or anything intersex in between. If you just have a supportive partner, then that allows you to be successful because you've got time. If you didn't have your husband with his job, he wouldn't have had the space and time to
That's
create
right.
what you've done.
It's true. And I look back at it now and I think, you know, I was really lucky. I think also, you know, there's a lot of people out there that have got very wealthy families or family money, and I haven't had that. And I sometimes think, oh, where would have I been if I had that, you know, very wealthy parents that just set me up? I've got more tenacious than that, I suppose, because I think sometimes when you're given something, actually you don't value it. So, but I know, you know, I know that as well. But then in a way, I have created something out of nothing as well.
You have.
So
yeah, but you've had the support in a way.
Yeah, I have, but
I had the space. But you've put in so much work. I know you have hard, not to take away from how hard you've worked, but I think, imagine if you didn't have your husband. Could you have done it, do you think?
Yeah, I could have, because when I was in London, I was 21 and I saved money and I ended up buying a flat on the Gold Coast for you know, 130,000, and I ended up selling that, and then so I was actually from the very early on, I was quite streetwise. Like, I knew I had to invest in myself, and that I was actually financially not stable, but I was very good with understanding where the difference in costs and what would be, you know, I never put myself into huge credit, but I always had something that I was, you know, bought a house, sold it, kept moving on. You know,
that's what it goes back to, is education. So it's like you're educating women or educating people to be smart about investing in yourself, making wise investments when you're young, when you have the capacity.
That's right.
And then you can have that space at some point to have that dual life.
I don't want to get stuck too much. I mean, we're a couple of I don't want to get stuck into that. We only I think money. Actually, I would like to go back to money, but also just on the short thing. Like, you know, you and I are now single mums, so I definitely hope that it's not, my success is not going to be contingent on, like, I don't know. I mean, I hope I will certainly hope to pick a partner, like I'm feeling in this conversation, like how important it's going to be moving forward. So, gentlemen, if you want a lady, you better be bloody supportive. I want to stop you there.
I used to be the main breadwinner when I first got married, so I'm not saying that because I'm a single mum.
No.
I'm saying that. So I used to work semi-corporate job, and I still work in that freelance to pay for this podcast and Mama Creatives and all the things that I enjoy doing. So I think as a woman, I did have a supportive partner, but I also used to bring in some money, good money with my other career. I never gave that up. So I've kept that as an anchor so I could do my creative projects. So you can do it with or without a partner, but I think having a partner on board who's supportive makes a big difference, but you can still do it.
I guess I
stood my ground though.
And if you can't get your partner on board, but you know, you love many other things in terms of this person, many other amazing qualities, then maybe it's also about pulling in other people. Like you were saying right early on, how important it is to surround yourself with people who inspire you to take that next level, or give you a bit of guts, or that see what you're doing. So that, like, I don't want either single people who are watching this or this person, if they cannot get their partner across the line on it, to feel that, like, maybe then it's about, and like, you know, for me, I do have this amazing group I've got a business women's group, and we meet up every 1 or 2 months, and we've got a Facebook group, and we share our challenges. And I know that actually without them, even when I was in my relationship and out of the relationship, actually they were my cornerstone of support. So that if you don't, like, I don't want anyone to feel dispirited if they got it, that they either don't have a partner or they don't have a supportive partner, but I do think the support is critical. So whether it's your partner or someone else, like, to pull in like people who are gonna keep you going, because it is hard.
Don't give up. Get support in different ways. But I also think it's really important to value what you do, but I think maybe change the metrics, you know, depending on what your partner's like. Speak their language, you know. There are ways to convince and persuade people to be on your side. You know, telling them just painting all day, not bringing in any money, and or just sitting on your computer all day and not contributing to the home. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but you need to show that this is important to your quality of life and the quality of the relationship and the quality of the family life. And so you need to work out what are those success metrics, whether it's money, whether it's doing stuff in the home,
legacy, happiness.
How do you bring that in? I mean, I think as we get older, money is very important, of course, But I think there's other things that are more important as you get older, when you realise that you can have all this money and you still can't be happy. But I don't think it's just about happiness and money. I think it's a lot of other things. But it's about having that conversation, like you said, and mapping out whether you have shared goals and where you can find those pockets of time to work on the creative business. Right. I don't think you can have everything perfect all the way. You do have to put in the effort, and you do have to sacrifice along the way.
That's right.
For the relationship and for your business, and sometimes one or the other takes the lead.
That's right. That's
it can't all work.
That's right. It is.
Sort of like flipping back to the proper job thing again, and this creative pioneering, like changing this landscape of how arts and business and everything works together, because I'm very passionate about that. Something I find very interesting and here in Australia, and I don't know enough about how it works out in other economies, but like 6.4% of the GDP in Australia comes from the creative industries versus 3% from farming. So, but yet, if there is a farming collapse, we are in there throwing money at it, and we revere. And I'm nothing against farmers. Like, this is not a like versus the other or anti-farming or
farming
anything.
Keeps us alive.
Yes, absolutely. So it's like, it's not about saying one is more valuable than the other, but why do we see that this is a flourishing, important industry that we need to keep going, and that is worthy, and that we value our farmers, and this is not against it, but then why do we not put a financial value on an industry that actually creates twice as much income and financial value? Like, why do you think we have this, and why is it that the artists themselves are somehow missing out? Like, how do we tidy this up so that the artists that are making the work are actually seeing the benefits of this, the money, because the money's there. It's just somehow not getting to the artists, and the money's there, and somehow people still are seeing the arts as a less than, creative industries as a less than industry. Like, how can we change that?
Well, I mean, that's such a big question.
It's
a big question. I mean, that comes back down to education. I think it also has got to do with our politicians. If you think about the decisions of like the next generation, but I'm actually something that I don't, it's sort of a little bit off tangent of your question, but something that you could really look into is cultural tourism, and that's something that I'm also going in from the arts and art pharmacy and jumping into this new industry where I'm actually taking the arts and working a lot with the tourism board, people from overseas, and actually showing Australia in that way. So I'm actually showcasing what Australia has here and uncovering that. And the thing is, with the tourism industry, if you're asking about farming, it's one of our biggest exports in the world, and there's a lot of money attached to that. So actually, maybe a tip out there is actually start thinking about tourism within your within your practice as well. Like, if you are a gallery, how can you work with your local business chamber, linking with them and asking them about the local the DNSW, which is Destination New South Wales, so linking back in with them and events. And so that's a little bit of a crazy little tip
but I think
there.
I think that goes back to target market and broadening your sort of
horizons.
Broadening people within your market, which is what we've talked about in other podcasts. Is if you want to make money out of your creativity, you do need to do the work to find your target market. You do need to figure out ways to sell and bring in different communities. So that's a great idea.
And it takes a long time to find your target market. You have different, because we had our online gallery now. That's 5% of what we do, and 95% is the art. The thing is, now with art pharmacy consulting, is we're getting up to the boardroom level. So I'm just in the city, we're sitting around boardrooms all the time, and actually it sounds really interesting, but actually by the time you've now sitting around a boardroom, it's not that interesting. So with Culture Scouts, that's actually where it makes it really interesting for me, because I'm in artist studios, so I'm learning how to, I'm actually started another business. So what I was trying to say here, the advice that I'm giving is, potentially you've got one idea, but what about opening up like a sub ideas out of that? Because sometimes when you first, and you'll see that with a lot of other businesses as well, and maybe it's a question that you can ask other people that are sitting on the couch, is, I started a couple of different ideas until finally one.
That's coming up often too.
You've got to know when to stop and when
just try something new. So you gain your credibility and you cut your teeth, because actually you don't want to be not famous, but you don't want to be really successful so quickly, because you can't learn from your mistakes. So start something, learn all the stuff, and then you can start something else, and actually
it's an accumulation of failure.
That's right.
What do you say? You said that you started out with nothing, and you have had a supportive husband, and you're also really smart, and you're working really hard. What do you say to naysayers or critics, who try to shut you down, even though you believe in your idea and you know that this creative business or this creative life is really worthwhile? How do you get through that?
Well, I just just
block.
Yeah, I'm a blocker. And there's a lot of them out there.
That's why you're so true to your conviction that you need to just, no matter, even if you're not bringing in the money, you just keep trying.
No, I think that you'll have a lot. This is why
it's like you cull the people who don't support.
Yeah.
If it's your partner.
I mean,
back to the letter.
Yeah,
and it's deeper. Maybe we'll put a link to Relationships Australia.
And that is deeper, and that's where you probably need marriage counselling.
I was thinking that.
Actually, if you want to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I think you need to go to someone so you have a shared vision.
That's it.
You can't be at loggerheads. You can't have someone putting you down who makes you feel less than worthy if you are sharing a bed with them. You just can't.
Yeah, they need to see, like, even
if
for this
person.
If
see, you need to be visible, and you need to have someone on your side. You need to feel that your identity is worthwhile.
And if this is important to you, if this is central, what you want to dedicate your life to, then I think we really will put a link to Relationships Australia in there.
Yes, or Esther Perel actually. So that's very interesting. So we got rid of that one. Just go to therapy. Is that the question? That one and support. And what about so there's lots of great support communities out there as well. So I don't believe your partner should be everything. They should be on your side, and you should be able to speak with them and be open to them, but they don't have to be your everything. So go and get business support and get community support and that sort of thing to keep
be selective about the people you're surrounding yourself with,
to help you get
carefully curated. Carefully.
Yeah. I really agree.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I've had so much amazing support through Mama Creatives. I don't know what I would have done without it. I mean, it's just you meet so many great people. You just start and then it just snowballs.
And you feed off each other. You feed off good people because they actually really want you to do well.
Yeah.
And if you're around someone that's like, keep going and doing so well, like, I will keep going. Yeah. You got someone that starts doubting you. Like, I'm not sure about that. You actually start going, actually, and then and I do that sometimes. I'm like, why am I thinking like that? Who's put this thought in my mind?
Yeah.
Because it's easier to be negative than it is to be positive.
Yeah.
In life it is.
It's just other people's insecurities.
That's right. And there's a lot of people that are, that want to be doing things. And you can feel it from them, that there's so many people that aren't happy. I meet a lot of people that aren't happy, and it's because they're not following their passion.
I think what I'm hearing on the Creativity Couch, we've done 8 podcasts this season, and 100 live events for Mama Creatives and all that. I've literally interviewed hundreds of people through my qualitative research career, and pretty much it's consistent all the way through. And what people, and I'm hearing it from you, is that even though you might be shy or introverted or start with nothing in terms of money, or you're very young and you find yourself on the other side of the world and you aren't unpartnered, the thing that gets you through is this conviction. You never give up, and you get through the barriers in some way, and everyone finds their way, but it's really, the answer is don't give up. And if you are with a partner who is not on your side, again, find a way through, find a solution, go and get some marriage counselling, and go and work out a way to maybe communicate as well, improve the way that you speak to someone, and not expect everything of them. And so it's about your own self-development, your own growth, your own improvement of communication. But if you really believe in it, keep doing it.
That's right.
Because as you get older, and I'll tell you, my mother's 83 now, her whole life she's been saying, I want to do this, I'm going to do, and she hasn't.
That's right.
And I see a shell of herself. I see a shell of a woman who's creative and brilliant, but hasn't pursued what she wanted. And you get to your 80s and you see the end of your life coming, and you have regrets. And so yes, you do need money, but you need beautiful relationships, and you need to be true to your conviction. And as you said, it can change along the way, but being true to your passion and maintaining your identity, which is what creativity and motherhood is all about, and Mama Creatives and what you do is just, if you give up your identity, it's so hard to find your way, don't you think?
Oh, that's right.
I mean, you started with different businesses, but you've
Yeah, you just got.
Didn't give up though.
No, it's like, you know, you put a little boat, you know, like a little wooden boat down a stream, like a little rocky stream.
Yeah.
And it'll just find a way to get to the bottom. You know, and it's the same thing. You'll get stopped and you'll jump over a big rock and you'll go that way. It's the same thing in life though, and you've just got to expect that. And I think in the early days when I started with you know, art pharmacy and the CBA women focus group, they took me away and that was amazing. That was a big turning point as well.
Was that big
they do these
conference
events
that they did? Did you go to the
been to two now?
Oh, did you?
Been
Wow.
to two, and it was so great because it was actually a bit of a light bulb moment for me. What I took away from that is all these other women, because all these
amazing
things
women
kept happening.
that.
Yeah, these really big things that kept happening to me. Why is that happening to me? Why is this happening? Like really big. And I thought everyone's out to get me, but then I realised
big things, as in just roadblocks or things not working.
Yeah, things, really big things. I used to get. I was like, it's so hard. But then what I actually realised that everyone was going through it, and actually I now expect that something bad, like not bad, but something's going to happen. And what is it going to be, and how do you mitigate that risk?
Yeah.
If that makes sense, how can I make sure that if I feel, and that comes back to trusting your gut, but knowing that, you know, that something's going to happen. I don't know, look, you know, you run a business at a certain level and lots of different contracts, there'll always be things that happen, but you need to make sure that something will happen. And I think that's what I got out of that with other women as well, running their own businesses, is there always will be things that happen and be thrown at you, and you just got to
manage it.
Just got to pull yourself up and just keep walking. You can't just start.
That's how you
I think
do it.
sometimes, you know, I live in the Byron Shire where there's a little bit of winky boinky that goes on, and people sometimes winky boinky, like kind of like pseudo spiritual sort of business that happens. You know, like my friend always calls it winky boinky, where it's not not necessarily very grounded. And I know a lot of people can have this sense of like, they have this feeling that like if you're following your vision and your heartfelt, you know, vision, that somehow if it's meant to be, it will be easy. And I just feel like that is the worst lie people are told, and the most disarming thing, because I see it happen all the time where people kind of like, well, if this was meant to be, it would be smooth sailing, and it's like, no.
Life takes effort, and life throws you curveballs. I think if it's meant to be, it means that you don't give up, but it takes effort and it takes action. So you have your intention and you have your passion. I really don't believe that if you have your passion, the money will follow. I think what they mean by that is, if you have your passion, you have a vision and you don't give up. But it takes so much effort and so much sacrifice to get through, if that's what you want to do.
Well, it's also about choices and priorities. Like this like so much of the work that the starting point I always do with clients in almost every workshop I do, and it's like, here she goes, she's banging on about this again. But I feel like I'm a one-trick pony. I feel like everything comes back to that clarity of vision, because that becomes your filter for the choices you make. So yeah, just because you're making the artwork you feel destined to make doesn't necessarily mean the money will follow. But if you're committed to doing it, then you can make choices for money to flow in other ways. Maybe not even to do with your artwork directly at all. Like if you feel you've got a legacy to leave through your artwork, or a story to tell, or something to do, so without like kind of, you know, and you don't want to try and reach a market, or there isn't a market there, or for whatever reason you don't want to monetize it, or it's not the right market conditions to monetize it, you know, there are other ways of constructing your life to support this core center vision, and it will involve choices, and it will involve sacrifice, and it will involve structuring things around it. But like you're talking about your mum, you know, like do we want to be 83 and full of regrets that we didn't follow it?
Yeah, I think if you identify as a creative person and you don't create, and you make excuses or barriers, or there are real barriers to it, but when you do have the chance and it's really hard to get back into it, what happens is you do get older. It doesn't mean it's never too late to start, but it is really hard to pick up when you've had years of telling yourself, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this, and you just procrastinate it. And basically it's not putting in the effort and not doing the work, and most people, change is hard, and change requires us to look at ourselves and to make some big decisions so we can grow. Otherwise you're in a rut.
It's the power of now though.
And I think, it's where you want to come from, a place of empowerment or a place of being in a rut. And I think what we're trying to say is, all three of us and people that we know, is this person, deal with your relationship, but don't give up your identity.
Correct.
And hold on to that vision. If your vision is important to you, then almost not at all costs, but
Don't
make
sacrifice
the decisions you need to
don't sacrifice your
support it.
essence. Maybe you can't make money now. Maybe
Yeah.
park the money. Maybe park the business if it's causing financial strife. Deal with your relationship, but don't give up your identity, because that's the thing that's going to propel you down a dark
and
path.
expect the roadblocks.
Yeah.
And that's right. And I think the other thing is, if you're creative, I do recommend learning about business acumen. I think that I
This
think
is the
that's
education.
and it's like learning how to run a business and media. There's great, like yourself would be, people should be talking to you how to sort of start in the beginning. But there's Realize Business company that I use that were mentoring me for a while in finances. So there are actually business government funded schemes out
even
there.
your small business centre,
That's
sometimes
right.
you can
And it's
access
cheap.
free
And
workshops
finding mentors, and then the mentors can educate you on how to
Yeah.
communicate, which is how you can then talk to your partner. So there's ways
That's
around
right.
it.
And it has to be structured though with
Yeah.
those mentors, because it's not just having a chat, it's actually having that
Accountability.
Focus.
and that's very hard. That's very hard to do. And I think that's, if you can find those people that are in a different, they always say, you shouldn't play with someone at the same tennis level as you. You need to be playing with someone that's higher than you, because you're going up to there. They're not going to gain anything from you, and you're only going to get better.
You won't improve.
So you always have to find people that are better than you. That's another thing, is find people that you can, play with the big boys. Don't play with people at your own level, because you're not going to learn anything. Like, try and play with that next level above you.
I always tell people to have this sort of big vision, and then you work backwards. And I think it's sort of like, otherwise, where are you going to go? You need to have some type of path. You can't just
That's right.
drift. I mean, you can drift in between, but you do need to know where you're going if you want to make some type of legacy or success, whether it's a body of work or money or happy relationships. Relationships take effort too. If you ignore your partner and you do your thing, that relationship's losing
That's right.
the effort. So, I mean, that's the answer. I think you've got to put in the effort and have some boundaries. Be tough. And don't give away everything, though. Don't give away all your integrity and your belief
Exactly.
and your value. I think that's it.
Thanks for joining us on the Creativity Couch. Up next, we have Cynthia Skibberus, curator, editor, and founder of Yoke magazine, which combines art, culture, and the ancient philosophy of yoga. And our next conversation is all about art and activism and what our role is as artists. If you've got a creativity challenge you'd like us to chat about, then please send us a letter to letters@thecreativitycouch.com. And feel free to send us your favourite C word. You could win some Pukka Tea.